Hello, welcome back to Surface Explore Record. I'm building an application using AI, using some best practices and some processes and workflows that I've developed over several decades as a software engineer and software developer. And I'm showing you how I do that process. I use a three-step methodology that I call Surface Explore Record, where I surface decisions, getting the AI to show me decisions that I need to make. And then I explore options for each decision, getting the AI to tell me the options for each decision and the strengths and weaknesses and trade-offs. Then I make the decision, and then we record those decisions. And those recordings then go to the AI as sort of a blueprint, specs or documentation, whatever you want to call it, to help guide the AI. Now, one thing I wanted to stop here, I'm in the middle of the build phase, and one thing I wanted to stop here is just a reminder, AI is a probabilistic engine, right? It is not a deterministic engine. If I give AI some instructions as a prompt, it doesn't really follow those instructions. It comes close to seeming like it follows instructions, but it's not really an instruction following engine. It is not deterministic. So keep that in mind. When you prompt AI, even if you give it the perfect prompt, you can't guarantee that it's going to give you the right output. That's why it's so important to go back and review, and that's why you become important as well, where you review what's happened, you look at the code if you don't understand, you ask about it, you look at the decisions if you don't understand, you ask about them. The more you understand going through the process, then the more reliable your software will be at the end. So let's continue with the build phase. We're on phase F of our build, and I'm going to go over to VS Code and Claude code running in the terminal, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, welcome back. Here we have Claude code running in the terminal in VS Code. All I've done so far is start up Claude, and then I did my pickup command. Remember, I created the pickup command in the last episode, and all the pickup command does is it reads through my implementation plan and implementation status. It gives me an update on what's been done before and what's still left to do. So here we see that parts A, B, C, D, and E have been completed, and then it says we're ready to go with F, and it gives me a lot of information on what to do next. Now, phase F1 is the front end skeleton. So I want to pull up my implementation status. It's important that I don't just let the AI run wild with this. I need to understand what's happening in these documents as well. So here is my implementation status. Again, you can see A, B, C, D, and E are all complete, but I want to go down to part F. So if I go all the way down here to part F, here we go. You can see that part F is just the front end foundation. So this is the skeleton, the bones, if you will, of my user interface. When I finish part F, there really won't be anything to show. It's just getting it all set up and ready to build the user interface, what the user will see. So what I want to do here is, in this episode, I really want to spend some time showing you how I build the user interface and then look at it as I build through different methods using the Surface Explorer Record to understand what's the best way to see it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through phase F pretty quickly off screen so that I can get to part G. Because once I get to part G and phase G1, that's where we start building the application's user interface itself, and then we can start testing. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to combine build and test so that by the time I get through with the build, I've got a really good test plan that I can use as I add features. So I'm going to start phase F1 using the same process before, just telling Claude to enter plan mode and do phase 1, and then have it review, fix any inconsistencies, and I'll keep going all the way through F4, and I'll come back when I'm ready to start part G. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. I forgot to start recording again, so I missed part of this, but what I'm doing currently is in one session, I have Claude doing the phase G1 implementation. And that's what you're seeing here. I just told Claude to start implementing G1 after I'd finished all of phase F. Remember that G1 is where we begin actually building the UI, the user interface. And this is an important step because at this point, I'll be able to start manually testing, manually seeing how the app works. So while Claude is building G1, I'm also going to get Claude to do two things for me. First, we're working on, let me go back to our sessions, we're working on a UI testing plan. So this is a readiness test that I've asked Claude to build. I'll put the prompts in the GitHub so you don't miss them. But I'm asking Claude to build a readiness plan for G1. Now, what is a readiness plan? Now, your AI coding agent is probably already building automated tests, things like unit tests, integration tests, smoke tests, end-to-end tests. These are tests that it runs automatically every time it runs or every time it makes a change. And sometimes it'll tell you things like all tests are green and things like that. Those are great. You need those tests. But a readiness test is a sanity check for me as a developer and for you as a developer. Think of it as a manual checklist so that when you run your code, you run your app, and you want to make sure that it works, you just go through the checklist, check step 1, it works, check step 2, it works, check step 3, it works. I'll show it to you in a few minutes when Claude finishes working. But that readiness test will build now phase by phase. It'll get bigger and bigger. And as we do tests and find other things that needed to be added, so that by the end, when we have our app complete, we have a full readiness checklist. And we can, let's say that we are building this and then we make a change to a feature later. Well, we already have this readiness checklist. So when we add that feature, we can go through and manually check and make sure nothing is broken. Yes, automated tests are great. Do not rely only on automated tests. You need manual tests as well to make sure things work. You want to find things that are broken before your users do. And that's what a readiness test helps you with. So I'll come back when Claude finishes with the readiness test, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, welcome back. So Claude has finished building the readiness test for G1. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to open it up here. Notice I did it in a markdown file, so it's very easy for me later to go in and do the check marks. I'll show you that later. But let's close this out and opening it in a preview just so it's easier to read. So this is the readiness test that Claude built. You can see it told me that it's through phase G1. We will add to this as we go through the later phases. It tells me what's covered. It tells me how to start it up. And then here's the actual test. So notice that it gives me, this is the test. These are the steps to take. And then this is what's expected. And then this is what's expected. And then here there's a place for me to put a check mark that it passed. So what I would do is when I'm ready to test G1, I would make a copy of this, maybe date it, go through each of these tests and check if it was correct or not. If it's not correct, then this gives me a great thing to give to Claude and say, hey, these didn't pass, go back and check on them. If they do, then it gives me a record of actually having run these tests. Now, a readiness test plan, remember, never let your AI run the readiness test plan. The AI would be very helpful and say, well, of course I know that works because I just built it. You want to do it and make sure that it works. You want to go through these steps. I know it may seem like a pain, but it is well worth it, especially when you start shipping your code off to users and you're not guessing or thinking, wait, did I check that feature? Did I not check that feature? Now we've got a plan and we know that we're checking everything as we go. This is extremely important once you start shipping it off, deploying it, and also when you're adding features later. So now that we have finished this, let's close out the readiness plan, and we're going to get Claude to help us with one more thing. Now that we have our test plan, when phase G1 is complete, we need a way to actually run our app and test it. Now, I know that I'm probably going to run this in Docker, but you may not know exactly how you want to run it at this point, especially since it's not complete. There's no deployment built in yet. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can ask the AI to help you with this. So I'm just going to say, hey, we're implementing phase G1 in another session. When that phase is complete, I'd like to be able to view the UI as it's built. What are some options for running the app so I can view the UI after phase G1? Now notice, we're going back to our Surface Explorer record methodology because we're asking the AI for options. We're not just saying, hey, run the app so I can see it. We want to know what are some ways to do that. And it's going to come up with several options. I'm hoping that one of them is to run it in Docker, but I could do it. Yeah, here it is, the first one. Option 1, full stack with make dev, and then it does the Docker compose up. So everything is running in Docker. It looks like there's another option 2 with a web dev server. Sometimes I do a dev server for the front end. You still want your back end running, probably in Docker or either in another dev server, because you need that communication to be able to check things out. The other option is to actually do a production style build. I'm not ready to do a production style build yet, so I think I'm going to do either option 1 or option 2, probably option 1 where it runs all in Docker, but I'll check that out later. Now I'm going to go back and check on my, my phase G1 build, see how that's going, and I'll come back when it's ready. Okay, so now we have both phase G1 complete and our readiness test plan complete, plus we have asked Claude for some suggestions on how to start up the server. So I'm just going to say, phase G1 is complete and push to main. Please start up the app using option 1 as recommended. And more than likely, I'm going to run into some errors here. I mean, the first time you start it up, you're going to run into a few things. So I'm going to come back in just a few minutes when it's all running, and then I can show you how I can step through the readiness test and make sure that what Claude is building is what I want to see. Okay, so you see that I was able to start up TaskFlow in Docker, and it's now running. I'm opening it in a browser on my computer. So now I'm able to actually log in, go through the test plan, and make sure that it works, only on the parts that I've built so far, G1. Now imagine how helpful this will be as I go through, because now when I do phase G2, then I can test that part. When I do phase G3, I can test that part. Then when I come out at the end and I finished all the way through parts I've already got a test plan ready and I've tested up to that point. So it makes it very helpful if you build this as you go. But if you've already built your application and you don't have a test plan, there's no reason you can't build one right now, and you can get your AI assistant to help you build it just like I did. But now understand that you will probably have to add more steps to it as you test and as you learn there are other things that you need to test as well. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to finish up phase G1. We'll pick up G2 later, and I'll show you more about testing and running it locally in Docker and things like that in the next episode. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you next time.